Welcome back, everybody. I'm so happy to welcome Rose Bianco to the show. You know her from Cobra Kai, you know her from many other places that you have seen her in recently. We're going to talk about all of that. Thank you, Rose, for joining me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and welcome. Again, I'm in Chicago. You're in Atlanta. I know you grew up in Chicago. You were born in Chicago. You were there until your mid-20s. So welcome to Chicago in a slight and silly ways in some here.
Yes. It feels good to be vicariously in Chicago. I want to go and visit so badly. I can't wait till COVID is over.
Yeah. Chicago is a beautiful place, as you know, but we're at 28 degrees right now. So I think Atlanta feels a lot nicer at the moment.
Yeah, and it's cold here, so you can imagine how I would feel if I were in Chicago right now.
Yeah, you would be in 3 layers, likely if you're outside. My wife, my wife and I wanted to go walk, walking the dog yesterday evening, and then we looked at each other. It was 25 and felt like, who knows what. And we said,
Right.
yeah, basement, a treadmill is fine. So we went to the basement and walked
Oh
out.
my God.
Yeah, I'm a wuss. What can I tell you? So again, I know lots of people who are watching this are Cobra Kai fans, as I am. It's one of my favorite shows. As a matter of fact, my son literally right now is finishing up watching episode 1 of season 1. It took me a while to get him on there. He and I this weekend, the past weekend, watched the original Karate
Karate
Kid
Kid. Mhm.
on. Yeah. So I had him watch that first, and now he's watching Cobra Kai season 1. So I get a chance to rewatch it all over again, and it really brings joy to my heart.
Well, good. He must be in that other room going, this show is amazing. Because
He was.
no,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's incredible.
It is. I asked everybody to be quiet. Fortunately, I'm upstairs, he's downstairs, so there's a little bit of space. And I think he's finishing up, so there shouldn't be much screaming. And I told him not to watch episode 2 without me. I wanted to make sure that I'm there for it. So yeah, it was great. And then me, it's kind of this juxtaposition of me being a host, me being a fan of the Karate Kid and the Cobra Kai universe, and me being an actor. So kind of all those three things combined. And as he's watching episode 1, I'm like, oh, Hannah, she was on my show. And then, oh, Susan, she was on my show. And oh, he's like, shut up, Dad. I'm trying to enjoy watching the show. I'm like, okay, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, but it was great. And then he's asking me, who are you interviewing now? And I said, Miguel's grandma. He's like, okay, we haven't met her yet. Okay, got it. So he's looking forward to seeing everybody. Anyway, I'll stop my chatting. Um, I really, again, in a show, Cobra Kai, they do such a fantastic job of mixing things, and it has a lot of heart. And one of those pieces that is true heart of the show is Yaya, is the character that you play, is Miguel's grandma. Can you tell me about how you approached that particular role and how it speaks to you?
Um, when I identify a lot with the role, even though
Hmm.
I was born here in the U.S. and I speak English. I'm not sure that it's even my first language because when I was growing up, when I was a baby, I'm sure my parents were speaking Spanish, so I guess that's actually my first language. Um, but I feel like Rosa is a combination of my mother and me because a lot of the old-fashioned ways of her dress and kind of staying at home and cooking and doing all this stuff is very much my mom. And my mom also was a bit of a wisecracker, but also, yeah, totally. But also, I'm very like maternal, and I feel um, protective of Miguel while at the same time not coddling him or babying him. So this
Yeah.
is a very Latino type of approach to
Yep.
child raising a little bit. And Carmen, I think, is a little bit more modern in her child raising because she's like, no violence, blah, blah, blah. And where I'm like, if he hits you, you hit him back. So that's kind of how I grew up. That kind of environment, or I don't know, in that environment, but just that type of upraising, which is more old school. And I think that Rosa is a little bit more old school in terms of that. I don't know what else to say about that, except that I feel like it's a glove on my hand. I mean, it's just so comfortable to me to play that role. Vanessa Rubio is so wonderful. I love her. I always give her big hugs when I see her, and she's so great. So it just made it so much better. Miguel is he's so down to earth. He's just like a regular kid. I mean, Xolo, the real kid. He's just like a regular kid who plays video games and is a little bit nerdy and just like totally normal. So I feel like close to my family because those are the people I act with all the time.
That's wonderful. Yeah, there's a beautiful chemistry between the three of you. And I wonder how naturally it came. I know you said that the role feels very natural to you, but that chemistry between you, Vanessa, and Xolo, how quickly did that form?
That was immediate. Immediate. My first day on the set, I met Vanessa and Xolo's mother because at the time he was a minor, and he reminds me a little bit of my own son, and I think at the time he had a job one day a week or something teaching Dungeons and Dragons in the valley. That he was very vocal about it, and so he just reminded me a little bit of my own son. He was just very adorable. And Vanessa, of course, is an angel. I hate to keep saying that, but she's gonna say, "Stop doing that, Rose." But it's so true. She's just so sweet, so open, so kind. It was an immediate affinity.
Yeah, again, it's being married to somebody who's a very strong, woman. I like seeing characters, played by women that are multidimensional. I like seeing the strength and at the same time seeing that heart. And I really like the way that they did Vanessa's character. By the way, immediately once I saw her, I said, okay, that's a love interest for Johnny. Even though way before anything ever developed, I knew where that was going. You too? Yeah. Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. So and great again. Writers are fantastic. I love what they are doing with the show. My only regret, and I know that likely they have the same thing, is that you only have 10 episodes to work with, because there's so much that they can actually play with. That a lot of it they don't get a chance to because they simply don't have time and they have to pick it. So I'm hoping, I know you got renewed for season 4. I'm hoping that if you're going to get kind of deeper into it, maybe they'll add more episodes instead of 10, maybe a 12 or a 13, kind of episode run. I don't know. I'm hoping because there's a lot of stuff. I was talking to Susan who plays Homeless Lynn, and there are so many ways that they can go with that character. I expected more things to be done with Hannah Keppel's character, who plays. Yeah, there were many things that they could have done, and they didn't do much in season 3. So there's a lot of stuff that's available to them. I just don't think they have enough of a runway. So I'm hoping that evolves. But
the runway is just the seasons as they mature and as they go through. It's all. I don't know anything about that, of course, but I just saw The Queen's Gambit, which I think is on Netflix, and that was 7 episodes. And at the end of the 7 episodes, you're just like, incredible. So it shows it is what it is. You just have to accept it and be grateful.
Yeah, and that one, by the way, is interesting because again, it was meant to be a limited series. It was meant to be a one and done. You're done. That's it. And people loved it so much, myself included, and then my wife, who I convinced to watch it, that they're talking about, hey, you need to come back. You need to continue this story and figure something else out. I had a few people from the show on. It was great. I kind of strap yourself in and you're there through the end, just with your eyes wide open of what's happening.
Who did you have on from that show?
Yeah, so I had one of the twins, so Matt, and then I had Borgov's wife. Her name is Yanina. She's
Yes,
one of
yes.
a
How cool.
wonderful actress.
I
So
didn't
those are
notice
the
that.
two that I had on at the moment. I think I have a few more scheduled to come on, but yeah, it's the beauty of what it is that I get a chance to do, which I'm so grateful for, is I get a chance to talk to the people who I watch on screen, and that's fantastic. So it's something that I did not anticipate until mid of last year when I started it, and now it's just become a part of my life. I remember at one point last year, by the way, another person who I had on my show was Ed Asner. I couldn't believe it that Ed and I had a chance to talk. Ed, played a very important role in Cobra Kai, and he's such a lovely, lovely person that it's sad that people may think of him in that
Oh, no.
way.
Because
Yeah,
he's always has this gruff exterior, which he even did in Mary Tyler Moore back in the day, and just his co-guest star roles. I'm sure he's very lovely. I looked at some of the pictures, and it's funny because I just finished The Queen's Gambit. I went through the whole thing in 2 days,
yeah.
and and so I didn't know who they were when I first saw all the little pictures of the people on your website.
Yeah. By the way, I started watching the Mary Tyler Moore show in preparation for the interview with Ad Asner because I've never watched it. I came to the country when I was 14. Mary Tyler Moore show was done by that time, so I never got into it. And then I watched it. I couldn't stop watching it. It's such a beautiful show, and Ad was wonderful on it. So
Yes.
anyway, getting back to Cobra Kai because I know a lot of people are watching the sport. And then, by the way, after it, I definitely want to talk to you about acting because this is what this show is about. And you have a really interesting story which a lot of actors will relate to. But on the Cobra Kai side, again, the show was on YouTube. I was not aware of it when it was on YouTube. I became aware of it when it came on Netflix. So thank God, for Netflix putting it on and making it what it is. But there was a period of time between that. Did you think that the show was just going to end after 2 seasons? Did you have any indication that it was going to get picked up by somebody else?
I had no idea that it would be picked up by someone else
Hmm.
for a long time until there were mutterings on social media about it. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, John's not going to call me and say, "Hey, Rose, you know what I've been thinking about doing?" But I assumed it would go to season 3, even if it was just on YouTube, because it was very popular on
Yeah.
YouTube. It was the most popular show on the YouTube channel. You know,
Well,
I think it was like the only popular show, really. Certainly of a narrative show.
yeah.
It was
Uh,
popular.
Yeah, and my goodness, the cliffhanger at the end of season 2, I was crying, and then I had to wait along with everybody else to see what happens. Ah, it was very very painful, painful to watch. So, and then because of a break, Xolo went from a skinny kid to, I mean, he's older. He's quite a bit older. I'm like, how are they gonna how are they gonna do that? But it worked out pretty well. I think it 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 seemed seamless enough in terms of some of the differences of the kids just growing up, which I know they weren't necessarily kids, but it was pretty cool to
Plus,
watch.
when he was in the coma on the hospital bed, he just like fattened up a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that worked itself out very very nicely because that certainly wasn't a part of the plan, but it made sense, and that's the only thing that we're looking for. Is just what's our way in? We're good.
That's funny.
Yeah. I know that again. You weren't there for the fast forward to season 2, the end of season 2, as we mentioned. You weren't there for the high school fight. Obviously, you were there kind of in season 3, but were you aware that this is where it's kind of building up? And did you know what was going to happen? Did they announce it? I know to the kids themselves as they were planning, likely, but to everybody else.
No, it's because of a phenomenon that is in all of TV and film right now. You only get to know as much as you need to know
Yeah.
because there's all kinds of leaks and they try to control that. And I'm sure everybody in the scene who had to do all that the practice involved in that must have been insane.
Yeah.
When I watched it, I just thought, how did they do this? My God! But I only know my episodes. My episodes, I get to read that script, and I don't really get told all the secrets. So I was shocked as well. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, and my goodness for Vanessa as well, just from an acting perspective, right? You're a mother, obviously, as a person, you're shooting with Xolo, you get used to him, you develop the chemistry, and then you find out, oh my goodness, what's going to happen at the end of season 2? I have to react to this, and then I have to wait. I have to wait a long time until anything gets resolved. So from an acting perspective, I found that very interesting as well.
Well, when we taped it,
Yeah,
season 3, it wasn't so far distant.
that's true.
So much time had not passed
Yeah,
from when it aired to when we were taping.
yeah,
So I felt it was a continuity for me, and it helped because I had really emotional scenes. I wasn't in it too much, but I definitely was. I felt um, I felt like affected. It was
yeah,
family, and you're brave for your family, as brave as you can be, but it's pretty horrible. It's pretty horrible when you think about it. I'm getting sad thinking about it. This is so so then a year passed. Right? Then I'm like going, oh wow, I did that. Oh wow,
yeah. And then in those scenes, from an acting perspective, right? So some actors use substitution, which I'm not a fan of. I've tried it. It worked for me on some takes and did not work on other takes. So I'm a big fan of imagination work and other ways of connecting. But what was it for you playing those emotional scenes?
yeah. So my acting style, I can't really describe it per se. I'm sure I studied. I didn't go all the way through college. I dropped out of college, first of
Mhm.
all, and then to the Goodman Theater joined the call, and I was like, whatever. It's too
Yeah.
late. But I think mostly the Stanislavski method,
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I went to study with Ted Liss. Ted Liss was kind of a legend over there in Chicago at the time, and I was at a conservatory for a couple of years. And it's mostly Stanislavski method. I wouldn't say it was the method, like the actor studio, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we did learn about substitution, and I never did Sanford Meisner or any of that sort of thing. But I studied with lots of different people. I studied with Bill Hickey in New York for about 6 months, and Julie Glavasa for a couple of years, and I've studied with Richard Dubin in San Francisco, and and as an actor, even now, occasionally I'll take an acting class. A couple of years ago, I studied with Clinton Landy here in Atlanta, and he's a great teacher.
Mhm.
So I've developed my own style, and plus um, I work a lot in audition all the time, and so the tools are more accessible. They're not so far and hard to get. So in general, I'd say I was in the moment, in the circumstances. I was actually in the circumstances. That's how I can best um, react to the circumstances, is to be stepping in the shoes. So it's kind of hard for non-actors to understand, but I'm just in the moment of the circumstances.
For non-actors, that basically means that you're kind of living in that particular reality at that moment. So
Yeah,
everything feels real for you because that's your life at that time.
right.
Think of it as Avatar, right? Not Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is amazing, my favorite cartoon series of all time. Animated series. My apologies for calling it a cartoon. But it's like Avatar, right? You're kind of going in that, and then it becomes your body, and it becomes your life, and then it's
Right.
hard to tell which one is real, which one's not. So that's kind of that acting when we can just get into it and it feels real and we react naturally, and that's what every one of us is trying to do all the time, which doesn't work all the time. But that's what we attempt anyway. And then on that, right? So you're in a very very emotional scene. You're living in that circumstance. How easy is it for you as an actress to get out of that and get back into, okay, this is my reality. That is just something that I experience, but that's not really what's happening.
Oh, it's instantaneous. I'm totally just, you
Thank
know,
God.
I'm like, oh my God, everybody got Kleenex, you know. I just, I get right out of it.
Okay. So between takes, you're able to kind of snap in and snap out. I know.
Between takes, I try to stay in character, kind of, to an extent. Not in character, but just I'm not going to be making jokes too much in between scenes when there's like this important scene that we're doing over and over. So if there's like an extended period, like lunch break, or just like they're setting another camera setup or whatever, then I just sit down and chat about whatever. But in between, you can't just be like, oh my God, oh my God. So that's hard to do.
Yeah, I know some actresses that I have not talked to them, but I've heard that she's crying and it's a heartbreaking scene, and then they have cut and she's like, okay, so what are we having for lunch? Good, and then back into it. I'm like, I don't know how they do that. I'm not able to do that. That's not my level of expertise. So it's fascinating to me how some people just operate and are able to do their job from an acting perspective. Um, and then from the role, right? So again, for the non-actors, you have leads, the people who are in most episodes. You have recurring people who come back and there are many episodes. Then you have kind of the guest star that comes in into one episode usually, and then you have co-stars, the smaller roles that are kind of moving the story along. So your character, I think you're a recurring, correct?
Recurring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A recurring guest star. I don't know how they're billing it, but it's a recurring. So did you know going into it that this is going to be a recurring, or did they say we don't know at this moment? And kind of, we'll see what happens.
When I first started, on my very first episode,
Mm-hmm.
I think that they just want to see if you work out.
Yeah.
They say that you're going to do more than the one episode, as I recall. As I recall, I went in and did the one episode, and it was eating dinner around the table. I think it was that scene.
I think
And
so.
yeah, so that went like gangbusters, And then like the next week, I'm like, okay, now we're going to do this other scene, in this other episode. So at that point, I realized, okay, this is definitely a recurring character. I just had to pass muster, so to speak. I'm sorry, this is making noise.
Okay.
So I'm recurring. I'm not a huge part of the show, obviously, but I'm very happy to be part of the family.
Yeah.
Um, I really feel like very grounded in what I have to do. I feel grounded in the family circumstances, and I'm familiar with the circumstances. I feel so close to my daughter, especially. She's so great. But then, my grandson, it's like I adore him. You know how it is. He's the boy.
Yeah.
That's another old-fashioned thing.
Yeah. No,
But
it's
you know what, Ellen? It's like I am comfortable with what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of other work as well, so
yeah.
I'm pretty happy. I'm in a pretty good position for my age. Oh, gosh.
That's another thing I wanted to touch upon, but we'll come back to it in a second. Because you're doing a lot of other work, which I want to discuss as well. when do you know from kind of the shooting schedule perspective? And I know Netflix is very careful, so no, don't tell us anything that we shouldn't be knowing. But how quickly do you hear of, hey, Rose, we're going to need you for a few weeks here, we're going to need you for a week here, because you have to kind of juggle your other commitments. How does that work?
Um, well, in general, when they're starting to shoot, they'll send out a message to my agent, and they'll need to pin Rose for this period of time, and then my agent knows, and it's a span of time, and then if I book another job within that period that I'm pinned, then my agent talks to the production, and they're like, okay, yeah, she's not gonna work on that day. That's fine. It's just a
So they
logistical.
figure. That's nice. Let's talk about kind of your path and your acting journey, which I found fascinating. So you went to DePaul, which is my alma mater as well. I love DePaul. I didn't go to theater school there. I went to kind of business, advertising, making, then came back. By the way, here's a little known fact. I graduated from SNL, which I still think is awesome. School of New Learning at
Uh,
DePaul. But one of the reasons why I chose that is because it was SNL, and me as an actor, I'm like, yep, I'm gonna have SNL
that's
always on my resume. So yeah, so
That's very silly. Huh?
I thought it was hilarious. But I like DePaul, and you went to DePaul, and then you studied, you've done conservatory, you've acted. Then you went from Chicago, and you kind of hit all of the markets eventually, right? The four major markets within the United States is, New York and LA. Then Atlanta became a very good hub lately, last 10 years or so. And then Chicago is starting to catch up. There's a lot of stuff happening in Chicago. So you left Chicago, and I think you went to LA. Is that correct? Or did you go to New York first?
No, no, no. I went to San Francisco first.
San Francisco, okay.
I was kind of a vagabond, and I went to San Francisco. I was going to go to New York because I said, okay, I had done an equity show, so I had equity credit. Then my next show I could join equity, and I've done a couple of commercials because I had an agent in Chicago since I was like 17, and I said, okay, I think I'm going to go to New York. I read the Shirley MacLaine biography, and I'm like, I am inspired. Okay. But then I went to visit my friend in San Francisco first,
Okay.
and it was so amazing that I just decided to stay in San Francisco. I stayed there for like 3.5 years. And it was really fun. And I was with a women's collective, Ray Nicolettes, and did a lot of silly plays and shows. And I sang, and I wore glitter, and we danced, and it was very campy, and it was just super, super fun times. And after a while, I said, I should be more serious about my career, otherwise I'll just end up being the school secretary forever. So I went to, so I got an agent, I did some industrials, I got my equity card finally, and I said, okay, now I'm ready to go to New York. And I went to New York, and I was there for, again, almost 4 years. It was very, very hard to get anything. And after like 3 years, I finally got an agent, and I got on a show. But by that time, I had met my husband, and then we got married, and then got a job in LA. So when I was starting to make inroads, just starting to make inroads, it was like, okay, I'm moving to LA now. So that's happened.
Let's pause for a second. I just want to say something to people that it's really important. It's not like you're an actor and everybody knows you. It's very regional in a way. So when Rose just said that it took her 3 years to kind of finally make inroads in New York, moving to LA is basically starting from scratch.
Yes.
That's what you need to realize. So all of that work, all of those connections, all of that, starting again. Go ahead, sorry.
Right. But then what happened is, excuse me, I got pregnant, and I had to get a job after. Well, I was working part time. My husband was the manager of a theater over there, the Westwood Playhouse, and I was like ushering while I was pregnant. And then after the baby was born, I started working part time, and then I had to work full time because we needed to get better insurance. So I basically gave up acting. I briefly in LA, my son was about 2 years old, and I said, "Oh, I hate this civilian life. I'm going to get back into acting." And I got an agent pretty quickly, but that fell apart quickly. I right away. I booked a show. It was like a reenactment show,
Mhm.
and where I played a girl that this killer, he killed his wife, he goes to a bar, he picks up a girl at the bar. That's me. So that show, that was great. I booked something quickly, right? But
Yeah.
then the agent wanted me to get a new headshot because I looked too Spanish in my picture, and she said that I could pass for other things, and I really needed to get new pictures. And at that time, my son needed surgery on his ears, and I just like, I hate this show business in LA. I hate it. Just, I'm done. So that's it. I was done for quite a while until my kids were like 10 and 15. Then I sort of got back into it in Atlanta.
Yeah, but so then you moved from LA to Atlanta because your husband got a job in Atlanta,
Uh huh.
and at that time Atlanta wasn't the hub it is right now, or
Yep.
prior to COVID. But so when did you decide that you were going to go back into acting, and how did that transition go?
Well, again, my husband was stage managing at the puppetry center,
Mhm.
and then he got a job doing the technical sales in a theatrical supply store. So he's always involved in that world,
Yeah.
and I was always working in an office, just doing regular work. And of course, after a while, you just really want to get back into theater. So I started doing
Mhm.
costumes for a show because I love doing costumes, and and then for this lady named Elizabeth Andre, and then I did costumes for another show, and that was 10 Little Indians, and she could not find somebody to play the old lady who did the knitting needles. So she said, "Rose, would you please do this role? I can't find anybody to play this role." I was like, "Okay, that'll be fun." So my husband was in the show too. This was community theater, by the way. I
Okay.
had given up my equity card by this time. So we brought the kids with us. They were like 5 and 9 or something like that to every rehearsal, and they were so good. And it was fun, and then I didn't do another show for a couple of years. It's like it's something where you have little kids in the house and you work in the day. You cannot do it.
Yep.
And I'll tell your viewers that the thing about the theatrical business is that I know many people who just don't have kids. They just don't have kids. Because it's hard to do this business and raise your kids. You have to give up the business a little bit. If you're not successful already, you just have to stop because you can't just never be home for your kids. So anyway, by doing one little play every couple of years over a period of time, I eventually got an agent. And by this time, my daughter was in middle school, my son was in high school. They didn't want me hanging around them all the time, so it was easier to just do more.
And what was the first thing that on screen that got you kind of back in the door?
It was the ultimate gift. I sent my picture and resume to an agency,
Mhm.
and I didn't hear from them for 2 years. I kid you not. And then one day I get a call out of the blue, out of the blue. This is something that your viewers who are actors should actually feel, heartened by. And they're like, "Hi, this is Bianco." And the agent said, "Yeah, we'd like to come in and we'd like to talk to you." So I was very excited, like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I went in and I met them and I had to do a monologue in their office. And they're like, "Okay, well, you're great. We'd like to, sign you on. And by the way, can you audition for this?" Like tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
And it was
Okay.
because it was like a Ecuadorian librarian in the ultimate gift. And at that time, there were no Spanish people, I guess, in Atlanta who were acting. And
Yep.
I speak Spanish. So I was probably one of very few people who might have even be able to read for that role.
Yeah.
So, and I booked it. I booked my first audition. So that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
Yeah, because you've been in a ton of stuff since, and I've seen you. I didn't realize it until I started kind of tracking back, as it's so often with actors. We've seen them, we know them, we just didn't quite put the two and two together. So I've seen you in, Project Power. I think that's what it's called. So I've seen you there, where you played the matriarch. I've seen you in a bunch of places. And but again, like many people, I probably remember you most for Cobra Kai.
Of
Yeah,
course. Yes.
yeah,
It's ongoing and it's so popular. Everybody loves it. My character's so funny, and they kind of know that it's part of the family, and it's just, of course, that is definitely what most people know me from.
yeah. Do you find that? And again, you've mentioned age, and I got into, I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. Then we immigrated. Then my parents said, "You're not going to be an actor because you may have some ability, but that's not why we came to the United States."
Right.
Um, So I always kind of tried to nibble, but you got married, they had kids, you know the drill. And then in my early 40s is when I started really kind of getting back into it. And at that time, I heard something that I didn't expect. People said, "Oh, that's great that you're older because there's less competition and there are more roles for you." And especially as you're starting out, and kind of the way that actors start out is you go to student films, you go to indies, that's kind of what you do. And I found that everybody wanted me because they needed the businessman, they needed the dad, they needed all of these roles that they didn't have too many people to play, especially in student films when you're working for free. So until you get to the indies and you're actually starting to make a little money. So did you find that as you got older, you actually got more opportunities for different interesting roles as opposed to when you were younger or not?
Oh, from when I was younger, it's a different world though, because
Yeah.
for whatever reason, even though I look so white,
Mhm.
as I read as Hispanic, and I am, and I'm Spanish speaking, which is on my resume.
Yeah.
So when I was starting out, in my first 10 years, let's say, my first 10 years of acting,
Yeah.
I always read for the Spanish teller or the Spanish receptionist or the Spanish mom, but there were not very many roles like that. And
Sure.
I was almost never sent out for just a role for a 30-year-old woman.
Yeah.
It had to always have, it always had to be ethnic.
Yeah.
And, and for theater, forget about it. Even, I mean, especially in theater, I definitely had to play Hispanic. And now it's the same. It's the same, by the way. But you know what's different now? There's a lot of roles.
Yeah.
And because I've stuck to it for so long, there
Okay.
are less competition. So that's probably one of the reasons I do get gotten so lucky.
Yeah. And how was, again, at some point, a number of Chicago actors kind of moved to Atlanta because Atlanta became the hub. How do you enjoy working in Atlanta? I know not all of the projects are shot, obviously, in Atlanta, but how do you enjoy working the Atlanta market itself?
Um, I think, boy, us Atlanta actors that I've known, I was doing improv for a year, and so some of my improv buddies are really doing great work as well. Theater, all the good theater people are now getting to work and make money. Theaters are now realize they need understudies who might actually have to go on because the good actors are getting roles in film. We're all very happy. It's kind of a small community where I may not have met Jane Doe in person, but Jane Doe knows who I am. I know who she is. If I ever meet her, I'm like, hey, and it's like, oh yeah, you're Rose. Oh, I love you and such and such. It's like we all kind of know each other to a great degree. It's kind of a very it's kind of a tight knit community, and we support each other. It's not very cutthroat, which it can be. Certainly in LA, it was like that. It was so awful in LA when I was there. I hate to say that because I may move to LA at some point, but it was definitely more cutthroat in LA. It just a little bit that I waded into it a little, and I'm like, oh, I hate this business. I got out. It doesn't feel good here. It feels good.
So I guess it reminds me of Chicago because it's a smaller community and a lot of really talented people who are pulling for each other. I met a few obviously, but for the most part, people have been really good to each other. And when I get invited on a project I cannot do it, my friends are getting recommendations right away. So that's kind of the way that we work. So it's good to hear that that's similar on the planet.
Right. Or if there's like a role, I would say there's Norma, Daisy, these anybody like between the 40 to 60 age range of Latina ladies. We all know each other. We're friends. We refer each other for things.
Yep.
It may not be for me, but it's definitely for Stella. It may not be for Stella, but it's definitely for Daisy. That like I don't know how to say it. We're just not backstabbing.
Yeah, I think the whole point of that type of an environment that you've mentioned in LA, it's not really helpful to anybody's career.
No.
I think because there have been so many opportunities that my friends got because I put them there, or I got because my friends put me there, that it's a tree that grows. And if we look at the business as a whole, people work together all the time. And directors, producers, they have a number of actors that they know can deliver and are good on set, and they enjoy working with, and they keep doing projects together. That's kind of, if you look at Hollywood and you look at success stories, that's what you see. Adam Sandler, Tarantino. It's all kind of the same idea of a lot of the same people working together. So it's that community that you build, not
Yeah.
the climbing on top of each other just to get to the top because you're never going to stay there. That's the point. So it's good. And in Atlanta, do you find again in Chicago, in order to get a top role on a show, usually goes to LA or New York actors. And then Chicago actors do a lot of supporting things, and then eventually maybe you get to a certain point. But in Atlanta, is that the case, or Atlanta actors are getting more leading roles?
No, it is the case. That is the case here. It is changing because it's been a while
Yeah.
now. In fact, a lot of LA and New York actors live here. Excuse me, but it's definitely changing. But there's only a handful of people who regularly are getting guest stars. But for the most part, you're going to start at co-star, and you're not going to have an opportunity to read for a guest star or a lead role. But what there is also, though, here is because there's so many shows that are originating here, there are people like me who, or like other people here in Atlanta, there's a couple who are from Atlanta, and there's Nicole Brown, she's from here, who have the opportunity to read for a brand new show, and then maybe going to be a recurring or potentially a series regular in the future, but certainly recurring, and to the point where you can get to recurring guest star. So we're lucky that there's so many projects here and so many new projects. I've been reading for bigger parts, definitely. But
Good.
it takes time.
Yeah, and you just have to stick it out, right? If you're good and you're in it long enough and you're a pleasure to work with, usually good things tend to happen. Few more questions. I know that we're coming up on our time, but back to Cobra Kai for a moment. Are there any parts from the experience on the show that are really kind of sticking with you?
that stay with me.
Yeah,
What?
that stayed with you. Not necessarily what was on screen, but just from the experience of being a part of the show that you're kind of looking upon saying, yep, I'll remember this for a long time.
Yes, I would say a couple of things. Number one, when I was doing one of the episodes in season one,
Mhm.
Jen Salata was a director, and um, I was doing something several times, and I was a little bit upset. I felt like, I'm not getting it or whatever. And I didn't say anything, obviously, and I just like, right, reset and do it again or whatever. And the director said, "You're doing amazing, Rose." And I think she kind of knew that I was feeling down on myself a little bit, but she was so uplifting. This is the director. Was so supportive and uplifting, and I felt so good because you always feel like you're thrown in there into the pool and it's sink or swim, and you
Yeah,
just when they say rolling at you just like there's like hundreds of people around and you got to deliver or you're screwed, and it's not easy. So I felt really really good about that, and on top of that, John Hurwitz is such a nice guy. He's such a nice guy. It's so funny because I then later went to see the Hamburger movie, the White Castle movie, and then the Hot Tub Time Machine, and I was like, oh, they're so foul, but their sense of humor is so dirty, but they're so down to earth and nice, and they make me feel comfortable, and then you don't have to be nervous. To everybody, not just me, and this is my first season, maybe my second episode, so I'm still very new. I felt comfortable right away, and not just me, but other people who are only there one time. They're just everybody's very nice. So it's just a really great environment.
that's wonderful. Perfect. I love that. And then lastly, if you had a chance to go into a hot tub time machine and speak to a young Rose who's just starting acting and give her one piece of advice, what would that be?
What would I tell me myself
Yeah.
in the hot tub time machine?
Well, figuratively speaking, or any
Yes.
time machine. If you had a chance to talk to a young Rose right now and give her one piece of acting advice, what would that be?
Um, I would say just do your thing. Go on there, read, do your lines, react to the people, put in effect your training, and then walk away from it, and don't be saying how terrible you did and how terrible you are. I was very bad about that, and I discovered that I'm not so terrible, am I? But I just worse. It was the worst. So I would say be easy on yourself.
Yeah, I I think all of the actors definitely need to hear that, and I think people in general need to hear that. Take it easy on yourself. The world is hard enough. We don't need to add extra weight on top of it. Thank you so much, Rose. It's been such a pleasure having you on. I look forward to rewatching your work now with my son and seeing more of it in seasons 4 and hopefully a lot more to come.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody for tuning in into another episode of The Love of Acting. We know you love it as much as we do, and this is why we continue doing this.